My name is Emily Carson, and last Christmas Eve, I found out just how far my family would go to exploit my kindness. They dumped 3 kids on me without a word, called it a favor, and vanished to a holiday party. That night, something in me snapped, and trust me, next year they won't see me coming. Where are you watching this video from? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. I should have known something was off when my mom kept looking at the clock like she had a plane to catch, not a pot roast still in the oven. Our family home in Vermont was glowing. Twinkle lights on the banister, pine garlands looped around every beam, sugar cookies cooling on the counter. It looked like a holiday dream. But standing in that perfect little kitchen, I had a pit in my stomach that even cinnamon and cloves couldn't fix. Then came the knock at the door. Not a friendly one, urgent. Panicked even. Jason, my brother, and Katie, his wife, blew in like a snowstorm. No coats off, no greetings, just 3 hyper kids in puffer jackets and a duffel bag of pajamas. "Hey, Em, you're a lifesaver," Jason said breathlessly, already backing out the door. Katie's sister snagged a last-minute invite to the brewery party downtown. It's adults only. Wait, what? I blinked, stepping forward. "We'll be back around 1, 2 at the latest," Katie added, kissing the air next to my cheek like I was their nanny and not, their childless, overworked sister who'd driven 4 hours from New Jersey. "But I have plans." "Next time," Jason winked, and just like that, the door clicked shut behind them. I stood frozen, 3 kids already kicking off their snow boots and heading toward the cookie tray. Mom was rinsing wine glasses like this was all perfectly normal. I stared at her. "You knew they were going to do this." She didn't look up. "You're so good with them, honey, they trust you." "That's not trust, Mom. That's dumping responsibility without consent." She finally looked at me, gave my shoulder a condescending pat, and said the line I swear is carved on my emotional tombstone. "You're the dependable one." No apology. No offer to stay. Just that empty praise that somehow sounded like a command. And just like that, she grabbed her coat and her pearls and floated out the door to join them. By 7:12 p.m., I was alone in a house that wasn't mine, with 3 children under 10 and absolutely zero notice. My dinner reservation, gone. My one night out all year, traded for macaroni, bedtime stories, and a tantrum so loud the neighbors probably questioned their life choices. At 9:41 p.m., the baby started crying because her tablet died. At 10:12, the twins got into a screaming match about who touched whose hot chocolate first. I sat on the bathroom floor between tantrums, tears threatening to spill, wondering when being the good one became the same thing as being invisible. Have you ever realized mid-meltdown that your kindness became your family's convenience? Because that was the moment it hit me, not like a snowflake, but like a snowplow. This wasn't the first time. It was just the first time I said it out loud to myself in that echoing Vermont bathroom. They don't respect your time. They just expect your silence. By the time the kids finally fell asleep, one in bed, one on the couch, one upside down in a blanket fort, I stood by the frosted window, staring out at the dark driveway. Not one message. Not one check-in. I should have been at dinner right now, with laughter and wine and a chance to feel like a whole person instead of the family mule. Instead, I was washing sippy cups and folding onesies. I didn't say anything that night. Not out loud. But in my chest, a little crack had formed. And cracks, they let the light in. 3 days later, I was back in my 1-bedroom apartment in New Jersey, sitting on my worn-out couch with a heating pad under my back and a travel blog pulled up on my phone. It was one of those rare winter mornings when the light actually felt warm. Outside, traffic buzzed and slushed down Broad Street, but inside it was quiet, blissfully quiet. No crying, no cocoa spills, no voices calling my name like I was the headliner in a daycare disaster movie. Just me. Me and my bruised pride, my cold coffee, and the realization that Christmas had somehow become a family tradition where everyone else celebrated while I cleaned up the mess. But not this year. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, tapped open my travel apps, and typed something I hadn't let myself consider in years. Solo birthday getaway. My thumb hovered over the search icon like it was some kind of emergency button. The last time I'd traveled anywhere just for me, without a family obligation tied to it, Obama was still in office, and I thought being selfless meant maturity. Now, I knew better. Arizona popped up on the screen, sun-drenched red rock photos, resort pools, silence that practically whispered, "You belong here." I FaceTimed Natalie before I could talk myself out of it. She answered with bedhead and a spoonful of yogurt. "Oh God, you've got that look." "What look?" "The I'm about to throw my entire life in a carry-on and disappear into the desert look." "What happened now?" I told her everything. Not just the kid drop-off, but the way Mom said dependable like it was a virtue and a sentence at the same time. The silent house. The fact that my phone didn't buzz once while I was drowning in chaos. She didn't interrupt once, just listened. That's what Natalie does. She listens when no one else even notices you've stopped talking. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. "So, what are you gonna do?" I flipped the screen around to show her the booking page. "Emily," she whispered like I was holding a lit match over a page of family expectations. 5 days, Scottsdale, resort, spa, and get this, heated pool with mountain views. I leave January 10th, come back just in time to beat the winter blues. She let out a slow whistle. "That's your birthday week." I nodded. "That's the point. For once, I want my birthday to feel like it belongs to me, not squeezed between diaper changes and guilt trips." Natalie raised her mug in a salute. "Then happy early birthday to my favorite almost 30-year-old badass." I laughed, but there was something shaky behind it, like my voice hadn't caught up with the courage of my decision yet. "You really think I can do this?" I asked, more to myself than her. She leaned forward. "You survived Christmas Eve as the unpaid nanny of the Northeast. You can handle a lounge chair and a margarita." After we hung up, I stared at the confirm booking screen like it might vanish if I blinked. Because deep down there was still that voice. The quiet one I'd grown up with. The one that said, "What if they need you? What if something goes wrong? What if they call you selfish?" But there was a louder voice now. One that had finally started growing somewhere between the hot chocolate stains and the baby monitor static. "What if you don't need to explain yourself anymore?" So I tapped the screen. Booking confirmed. I didn't cheer, didn't cry. Just stared at the email for a long time and whispered, "This time, I'm doing something for me." It didn't feel selfish. It felt like a door cracking open after years of pretending I didn't need air. I gave it 24 hours before I told the family group chat about my birthday trip. Just enough time for me to sit with it, alone. To let the choice settle into my bones before I offered it up to be misunderstood. It was a Sunday afternoon, snow tapping at the windows of my Jersey apartment, and I was curled up on the couch with a lavender candle flickering beside me. My suitcase was already halfway packed, sun hat, paperbacks, sandals I hadn't worn in years. The desert was calling, and this time I was listening. I typed it casually. No fanfare, just enough to inform, not invite. "Hey everyone, just a heads up, I'll be out of town Jan 10-15 for my birthday. Headed to Arizona for some sun and solitude. Can't wait." Then I set my phone down, flipped open a novel, and tried not to care. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then finally my mother's reply bubbled to the top. "That's nice, dear, don't forget sunscreen." No smiley face, no follow-up. No, "That sounds amazing" or "good for you." Just the kind of lukewarm acknowledgement you'd give a coworker telling you about a dental cleaning. Everyone else, radio silence. Jason didn't even leave the conversation. Just nothing. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, that familiar burn rising in my chest. The kind you get when you realize people don't hear you because they never expected you to speak up in the first place. I tossed the phone across the couch and muttered, "Okay, so we're doing that." An hour later, Katie's name popped up on my screen. No message in the group chat, of course not. This one came privately. "Hey, Em. Quick favor, could you pick up the twins from school the week after New Year's? Just moan through Thurs. We're in a childcare crunch and you're always so good with them. Promise it won't be like Christmas." There it was. Not even a full day after I declared I was doing something for myself, and already the silent transaction had returned. My boundaries weren't obstacles to them. They were puzzles to be solved. I didn't answer right away. I walked into the kitchen, made tea, and watched the kettle boil while the text hung in the air like bait. By the time I returned, another ping. "We'd owe you big time. Just trying to avoid a sitter we don't really know. Your family." My chest tightened. That last line always got me. Your family. It was weaponized softness. The warm-colored lie that always came right before the unpaid labor. And somehow, despite everything, I still felt the urge to say yes. Because wasn't that what I was supposed to do? Fill in the gaps, smile through the stress. I reread the message. Then I went back to the group chat and rescanned my original birthday announcement. It was still there, unread by half of them. Quietly ignored like I'd whispered it into a hurricane. That was the moment I knew. They didn't care about my trip. Not because they were busy, not because they forgot, because they didn't think it mattered. I wasn't a person in their eyes, I was a system, a default solution. If I said I was going away, their first thought wasn't how exciting for her. It was how will this inconvenience us? I picked up the phone and drafted my reply to Katie. "Hey, I'm actually prepping for my trip and can't commit to anything that week. I hope you find a good solution, though." I stared at the screen before hitting send. It was polite, clear, final, but my thumb trembled anyway. The read receipt came instantly. No reply. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then nothing. I turned off my phone. The tea had gone cold, but I sipped it anyway, staring out at the gray New Jersey sky. Somewhere out there, red rocks and silence and dry heat waited for me. Somewhere out there, I was already different. Because for the first time, I hadn't rushed to explain myself. I hadn't padded the no with an apology. I hadn't put their needs above my own. It was a small decision, just one text, but it felt like a tectonic shift. 2 nights before my trip, I came home early from work. Snow had started again in the city, light, drifting flakes that blurred the skyline in soft edges. I had a takeout bag in one hand, my scarf wrapped too tight, and Arizona humming in the back of my brain like a secret I couldn't wait to unwrap. I didn't expect anyone to be in my apartment, but when I stepped into the hallway, the air smelled different, like lavender lotion and my mother's perfume. I froze at the sound of her voice. "She'll do it. She always does. That's the thing about Emily, she doesn't say no, not really." I tiptoed down the hall, heart pounding in my chest. I peeked around the corner and there she was, my mother sitting on my couch chatting on speakerphone like she lived there. My spare key must have still been on her ring. I didn't breathe. I just listened. "Jason said they can drop the kids off by 10. If they leave early enough, she won't even realize they're gone until she gets back from work." The voice on the other end. Jason, my brother, clear as day. "She won't flake. Worst case, she's annoyed. But she's too responsible to let anything actually fall apart." They both laughed, like this was some long-running family joke and I was the punchline. Something inside me went very, very still. I stepped back, retraced my steps quietly to the front door, and opened it loudly this time, just enough for my mom to think I'd just arrived. "Oh, Emily," she said, springing to her feet like a sitcom mom caught going through a diary. "I thought I'd surprise you. I let myself in, hope that's okay." I didn't answer, just gave a tight smile and hung up my coat. My thoughts were slow, focused, like lining up dominoes. She fumbled with her scarf. "I brought some of that ginger tea you like. You always get run down before trips," and I thought, "Did you say something about Jason leaving early?" Her eyes flicked toward the phone, still lit on the coffee table. "Oh, that just logistics. You know how he gets, always last minute." I walked to the couch, picked up the phone, and handed it to her. "You might want to turn off speaker next time." For a moment, she looked almost ashamed, but then the mask snapped back into place. "Emily, honey, you're reading too much into this. Nobody's trying to take advantage." "Yes, you are," I said, my voice calm. "You were planning to leave the kids with me again without asking. On the 1 week I said I was unavailable." She sighed like I was being exhausting. "I just don't understand why you're acting like this trip is sacred. It's only 5 days." "Exactly," I said. 5 days, that's all I ever ask for. 1 week a year for myself, and you still can't give me that without trying to take something from it." Her expression hardened. "It's not taking if it's family. No, it's not supposed to be." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked to my laptop, opened it, and clicked through my itinerary. I found the Manage Trip tab, clicked Change Flight. "Emily, what are you doing?" I didn't answer, Just selected the earliest flight out tomorrow morning, 7:10 a.m., confirmed it, watched the screen shift from anticipation to action. Then I turned to her and smiled softly. Changing my plans, she blinked. But you said you were leaving Wednesday. I was, I said. Now I'm leaving tomorrow. She opened her mouth, then shut it. For once, she didn't have a script ready. I think it's time you gave the spare key back, I added, holding out my hand. Her fingers twitched at her purse strap. You don't mean that. I do. She placed it in my palm like it burned her. Then she gathered her coat in silence. At the door, she turned back. You're going to make things very difficult for everyone. I know, I said. That's how boundaries feel when you're used to crossing them. She didn't reply, just left. The door clicked shut behind her like a punctuation mark. I stood in the hallway for a long time. Then I looked around at my apartment, not perfect, not fancy, but mine. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a halfway point. It felt like a starting line. That night, I didn't cry. I packed instead. Quietly, methodically, like a woman escaping a country she once loved but finally saw for what it was. My family had handed me the match, and I had finally struck it. By the time the sun rose, I was already at the airport, checked in through security, and seated at gate B-17 with a black coffee cooling in my hands. I hadn't told anyone. Not a single word to the group chat. Not to Jason. Not even to Natalie. Silence, it turns out, is more powerful than explanation. I'd packed in the dark, methodically folding sundresses and swimsuits and all the tiny rebellions I hadn't allowed myself in years. My phone stayed face down on the kitchen table the whole time. No music, no podcasts, just the quiet hum of my own resolve. Before I zipped my suitcase shut, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the blinking cursor of a blank message to the family group chat. What do you say to people who have mistaken your reliability for consent? I kept it simple. Hey everyone, I'll be leaving early for my trip. Won't be around this week. No explanation, no justification, just a statement. I pressed send and closed the app without waiting for the typing bubbles to appear. Back at the gate, the loudspeaker droned about pre-boarding while a toddler shrieked somewhere behind me. Normally, that would have set my nerves buzzing. But not today. Today, I was on the other side of obligation. The other side of expectation. For the first time in years, no one knew exactly where I was. No one had permission to plan around me. No one had a schedule printed in their minds with my name penciled in as a backup plan. I was gone, not metaphorically. Literally, gone, and that quiet, that absence, it didn't feel selfish, it felt like peace. My phone buzzed around 9:03 a.m. The group chat, I flipped it over. One notification, not a flood, just a trickle. My mother had loved the message, that was it. No questions, no pushback, no demand for clarification. That tiny reaction, so nonchalant it might as well have been a typo, was somehow the final proof I didn't know I needed. They'd already moved on. Probably assumed I'd be back by the weekend. Probably figured I'd cool off or that I needed space but would still show up when things fell apart. They always did. What they didn't understand, what they never understood, was that this time I wasn't just leaving for a trip. I was leaving them behind. Not in anger, not as punishment, but as a decision. There's a difference between being left out and stepping out. And this time I was stepping out. Out of obligation. Out of guilt. Out of the hamster wheel of yes that had worn me down to a ghost of myself every December for the past decade. Somewhere between the check-in counter and my gate, it hit me that I hadn't packed a single item for anyone else. No, just in case toys for the kids. No souvenirs bookmarked on my phone. No polite text promising to bring something home. Only what I needed, only what I wanted. I could almost cry at the thought of how rare that was, but I didn't cry. Not when the plane taxied the runway, not when it lifted off into that pale winter sky, not when I looked down and saw the city growing smaller and smaller beneath me. Instead, I smiled. It wasn't big or dramatic. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like something much quieter and somehow much stronger. I was just done. Not with love. I still had that, not with hope. That too. But I was done waiting to be considered. Done measuring my worth by how much I could carry for other people. Done being surprised when no one offered to carry something for me. And in that quiet space, 30,000 feet above the lives I'd always put ahead of my own, I felt something start to settle inside me. Not bitterness, not even regret, just stillness. And for the first time in years, I let myself sit inside it. I woke up on my birthday to sunlight pouring in through gauzy curtains and the low rustle of palm trees outside my window. No alarms, no crying children, no schedule, just stillness. The resort in Scottsdale was as dreamy as the pictures promised. Warm terracotta tones, wide-open skies, and the kind of silence that makes you realize how much noise you've been living with. I stretched under the crisp white sheets and let myself lie there, staring at the ceiling, smiling at the fact that no one needed me today. That in itself was the gift. By 9 a.m., I was poolside with an iced coffee in one hand and a book in the other. My shoulders were bare. My phone was face down on a towel, just far enough away that I could ignore it and still hear if it buzzed, though I had no intention of picking it up. The pool shimmered like liquid turquoise. The desert air was dry and kind. And for the first time since I turned 21, I wasn't spending my birthday planning a meal for others or coordinating a sleep schedule for 3 different kids. I was alone, and I loved it. I dipped my legs in the pool, the water cool and clear. Around me, other guests chatted softly, clinked drinks, read quietly. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me. No one even thought about whether I was dependable. I was just a woman on vacation. A woman reclaiming her own birthday. My phone buzzed once, then again. I let it sit there for a while before I picked it up, towel drying my fingers first. I had made myself a promise. I'd look, but I wouldn't react. The first message was from my mom. "Happy birthday. We're all waiting to celebrate with you, dear." Like I'd simply forgotten. Like I'd taken a wrong turn and would be right back, cake in hand, ready to smile and clean up and be gracious and giving all over again. I stared at the message for a long moment. The casual manipulation of "we're all waiting" was so familiar I could practically hear her voice in it. But not this year. This year I didn't rush to reply with "thanks, miss you guys," or "wish I was there." No, this year I told the truth. I took a slow sip of my iced coffee, snapped a photo of the palm trees reflected in the pool, and typed, "Already celebrated. I'm on the other side of the country. Enjoy the kids. Son." Then I turned off my phone. Not muted, not on silent, off. And the moment I did, something inside me exhaled. That text wasn't cruel, it wasn't even angry, it was accurate. I had already celebrated by giving myself something no one else had ever offered me. Time, space, consideration. I wasn't asking to be seen anymore. I was simply existing in the full light of my own life. And the more I leaned into that, the more I realized I didn't need permission. I didn't need applause. I didn't even need an apology. What I needed was what I had right now, myself, fully present, fully whole, unburdened by other people's needs. I set my book down and slipped into the pool, the water wrapping around me like an embrace I didn't know I'd been craving. I floated on my back, the sun warming my face, and thought, this is what it feels like to not owe anyone an explanation. This is what it feels like to belong to yourself. And I knew as I drifted in that quiet, glimmering water that nothing back home would ever be the same. Not because they'd changed, but because I had. It took them 3 days to notice I was serious. 3 whole days of silence from my end, no check-ins, no offers to pop by and help, no emoji-laced replies that smoothed everything over. And then the group chat exploded. I was back at the resort, wrapped in a white robe with a clay mask on my face, sitting on the balcony and watching the desert sunset burn pink across the sky when the notifications started rolling in. Jason, wait, is Emily actually not coming back this week? Katie, can someone clarify if she's ignoring us or just busy? My mother, she said she was leaving early. I thought that meant Wednesday, not Sunday. Jason again. Katie's parents are out of town. We need someone for the kids starting tomorrow. Was this not communicated? Katie, you said she'd be back. I literally planned our whole work week around this. My mother, I assumed she'd understand. She always does. And then the moment I'd been waiting for, not with joy, but with a strange, detached curiosity. The moment they turned on each other. Grandma, yes, she was in the chat too, mostly for holiday photos and random memes. Why didn't anyone ask her first? A pause. That line hung there, heavier than any of mine ever had. Katie, I did ask, kind of. Jason, no, you assumed, so did Mom. My mother, she never said no outright. She was vague. You know how Emily is. And that right there, that line cracked me wide open. You know how Emily is. Not reliable, not helpful, just vague. Like my boundaries were some slippery, inconvenient personality quirk rather than a life-saving defense mechanism I'd learned to whisper instead of shout. More messages poured in, fast and accusatory now, like water breaking through a dam. Jason, so what are we supposed to do? Our flight ends in 3 hours. Katie, we can't cancel. Everything's booked. We'll lose the deposit. Grandma, she told you she was leaving. You all ignored her. My mother, don't make this my fault, Mother. Grandma, you all treat her like the fallback plan. I've said it for years. The read receipts were lighting up like a Christmas tree. No one left the conversation. No one said maybe she deserves this break. No one apologized. But for once, they weren't blaming me. And that was new. I watched the chat scroll, my coffee forgotten on the side table. There was a kind of poetic justice to it, honestly. For years, I'd cleaned up the emotional messes, handled the schedules, kept the peace. I'd been the default solution to every family gap: weddings, holidays, last-minute emergencies, overextended parents who needed just a little help. But the second I became unavailable, the entire structure trembled. Because the truth is, when you build a house on someone else's back, you don't notice it's unstable until they stand up. I didn't reply to any of them. Didn't offer to reschedule my flight. Didn't rush to fix what they'd broken. Instead, I turned my phone back to silent and slipped on my sandals. There was a fire pit near the back of the resort, just past the spa. Cozy chairs, desert wind, soft laughter from strangers with no opinions about my boundaries. I walked slowly, breathing in that cool, dry air, feeling the difference between guilt and grief. Because yes, part of me still grieved the version of myself who would have dropped everything, who would have thrown a cardigan over her swimsuit and called the airline in a panic, who would have felt like not helping meant not being loved. But she was gone now, and in her place was someone else entirely. Someone who understood that peace is not the same thing as silence. That quiet doesn't have to be absence, it can be presence too, my presence, uninterrupted, unbothered, unburdened. As I sat by the fire that night, warm and weightless under the stars, I thought about all the women I knew who had spent years being the dependable one. The way we're praised for it, and punished. And I thought maybe it starts like this. One trip, one no. One missed babysitting gig that turns into an earthquake of accountability. Maybe that's how it begins. The first voicemail came in just after sunrise. I was halfway through a room service breakfast, fluffy eggs, fruit I didn't have to wash myself, and coffee that stayed hot because no one interrupted me for milk or sippy cups when my phone lit up again. Missed call, Mom, voicemail, one new. I didn't open it right away. I finished eating first. A quiet celebration in itself, really putting myself first, even just for 10 more minutes. But curiosity eventually won. I pressed play and let her voice fill the quiet suite. Emily, honey, I don't understand what's going on. Jason and Katie had to cancel their trip and now everyone's upset and pointing fingers, and it's not like you to do something so dramatic. There it was, the first stone. She continued, her voice tighter now. You abandoned us. You left without telling anyone the truth. I had to find out from your grandmother that you changed your flight. That's not how family treats each other. I hit pause. That line again. You abandoned us. Funny how us suddenly includes everyone you've been carrying the weight for when you finally set it down. By noon, there were 4 more voicemails. 2 from my mom, 1 from Jason, and 1 unexpectedly from Katie. Her voice was clipped, brittle. Just so you know, the airline won't refund our tickets. The hotel won't either. And I had to tell my boss we won't be coming in for the workshop, so thank you for that. I hope your birthday was worth it. I stared at my phone. Was it worth it? I looked around. Desert sun spilling over terracotta tiles. The faint sound of water trickling from a stone fountain. A calendar with nothing on it except massage appointments and poolside reading. Yes, it was. I didn't delete the voicemails, but I didn't respond either. Instead, I opened my notes app and typed 1 sentence. They're not mad because you hurt them. They're mad because you stopped helping them hurt you. The guilt was there, sure, flickering at the edges like it always had. But it didn't take root this time, because this time I had context, distance, clarity. They weren't scrambling because I betrayed them. They were scrambling because I disrupted the system. The one where Emily always said yes, always made it work, always bent herself into whatever shape they needed. This time they had to adjust, and it was making them angry. Even Grandma called, though her tone was softer. "Emily, sweetheart, I know everyone's saying things. Your mom is, well, she's spiraling, but I want you to know I support you. I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner. You were right to leave." That one I listened to twice. Because buried in her words was the first real acknowledgement I'd ever heard from a family member that I wasn't overreacting. I was finally reacting. For years, I'd trained myself to absorb everything, to see my family's chaos and think, how can I fix this? Instead of asking, should I even have to? But something about sitting in a desert thousands of miles from home, with no laundry waiting and no emergencies ringing in my pocket, made the answer clear. I wasn't broken for wanting rest. I wasn't selfish for needing space, and I definitely wasn't cruel for refusing to be exploited again. By the third day, the voicemails shifted tone. Less rage, more despair. My mom's voice, thinner this time. "Emily, I don't know who you are anymore." I whispered back, to no one in particular. Finally! Because I wasn't the same, and I wasn't going back. New Jersey was colder than I remembered. After 5 days in the desert, my bones had gotten used to warmth, sunshine that didn't apologize, air that didn't bite. But as the cab pulled up to my building, I felt something else settle into me. Not dread, not tension, readiness. I rolled my suitcase up the steps of my apartment, let the heat from the radiator wrap around me, and took one long breath. It wasn't peace, exactly. It was preparation. I didn't answer the group chat when I landed. I didn't send pictures of the trip or post a single thing online, not because I was being spiteful, but because silence, I discovered, was no longer something they could weaponize. It was mine now, and I used it like armor. 2 days after I got home, my mom invited me to dinner. No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, just a simple, "Sunday dinner, 5 o'clock, Jason and Katie will be there." I stared at the message, then stared at myself in the mirror. Still tan, still calm. Still standing, I wrote back, "I'll come, but I won't stay long." She sent a thumbs up. That was the first sign things were shifting. Not, "Can you bring dessert?" Or, "Will you get there early to help?" Just acceptance, or maybe caution. Either way, I showed up Sunday night wearing jeans, a sweater, and the kind of expression that says, I didn't come to fix anything, but I came to finish something. Jason opened the door. He didn't smile. "Hey," he said, stepping aside. I walked past him into the same house that used to smell like Sunday sauce and cinnamon and now smelled like tension masked with lemon cleaner. Katie was in the kitchen, slamming a cabinet just a little too hard. "Hi, Em," she said without turning around. "Hi, Katie." The twins were in the living room, headphones on, lost in screens. My mom hovered by the oven like she hadn't been staring out the window waiting for me to arrive. She glanced up. "You look well." "I am," I said simply. Silence stretched long and uncomfortable like a tight waistband after a big meal. I sat at the dining table, not offering to set it, not reaching for plates. My hands stayed in my lap. No one met my eyes. It wasn't hate. It was uncertainty. They didn't know which version of me had walked through the door, and that, for once, gave me all the power. Dinner was awkward. Jason talked about a podcast. Katie mentioned work. My mom asked me how the spa thing went, like I'd just gotten a facial at the mall instead of rewriting the entire structure of our relationship. I didn't offer stories. I didn't gush about the resort or brag about the weather. Instead, I nodded, sipped water, and waited. Because the real conversation hadn't started yet, but I could feel it coming. The truth is, families like mine don't blow up. We don't scream and cry in front of each other. We slow boil. We passive-aggressively slice pie while seething. So when I set my fork down halfway through the meal, it was like dropping a bomb. My mom glanced up. Katie froze with her wineglass halfway to her lips. Jason looked at his plate. I cleared my throat, soft but steady. "I'm glad we could do this." No one responded. "So I just want to say something, and I'd appreciate it if no one interrupted." That got their attention. My mom straightened her napkin like she needed something to do with her hands. Jason leaned back in his chair. I kept my voice even, calm. I've been helpful for a long time, too long maybe, and I've done it because I love you, all of you, but love without respect isn't sustainable. My mother's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. So going forward, I want to be clear, I won't be the emergency plan, not without a conversation, not without my consent. My time matters, my life matters. A chair creaked as Katie shifted. If you ask, I might say yes. I might even be glad to help, but assuming, guilt-tripping, strategizing behind my back, that won't work anymore. I took a breath. Jason opened his mouth, but I held up one hand. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad. I'm just telling you who I am now. The silence that followed was thick, not hostile, just full, like a room finally inhaling after years of shallow breaths. Then softly, my mother spoke. You're different. I nodded. I am. Jason ran a hand through his hair and muttered, could have just said something before the trip. I did, I replied, turning toward him. You didn't listen. And there it was, the truth no one could sidestep anymore. I gathered my coat, stood up, and said, I'm heading out. Katie looked up, startled. But we haven't had dessert. I know, I said gently, but I didn't come for dessert. I came to be heard. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't need to. Because nothing I could have broken on the way out would have made more noise than the silence I left behind. The next time it happened, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I didn't even flinch. It was just a Tuesday. A regular, gray-skied weekday, 2 weeks after that tense Sunday dinner. I'd stopped checking the group chat daily. Stopped waiting for approval. I'd gone back to work, to reading before bed, to calling Natalie and laughing like I used to in college, free, unfiltered. So when my mom called and invited me to a family planning meeting, I said yes without much thought. I knew what she meant. Easter was coming. A test, probably, or maybe a trap. Either way, I didn't feel dread. I felt ready. The living room was already full when I arrived. Jason, Katie, the kids in the back with their iPads. My mom had notepads out, color-coded like a general before a battle. She smiled at me too brightly. We were just talking about Easter logistics. Perfect, I said, hanging up my coat. Let's get into it. For a moment, I just watched them. Katie curled on the love seat, arms crossed. Jason scrolling his phone, barely pretending to pay attention. My mom already listing menu items and delegating tasks as if I had RSVP'd to serve, not attend. And Emily, you can come early and prep the salad and… No, I said, just like that, clear, level, final. The room paused. Katie looked up. Jason lowered his phone. Mom blinked, confused. No to what, dear? No to being assigned something without being asked. She pressed her lips together. I just assumed. I know, you always do. I walked over, sat down across from her, and folded my hands. I came today because I want to be involved, not absorbed. There's a difference. Emily, Jason sighed, it's just a salad. It's never just a salad, I replied, turning to him. It's a pattern, and I'm ending it. Silence again. It wasn't angry this time. Just stunned, like they couldn't believe how calm I was. I'm not the backup plan, I said. Not the fill-in babysitter. Not the invisible gear in your holiday machine. I'm your sister, your daughter, and I'll be part of this family on terms we all agree to. My mother's voice was low, wounded. You don't have to make this so cold. I'm not being cold, I said. I'm being clear, and the fact that it feels cold tells me everything I need to know about how warm I've always been. That hit. I saw it in her eyes. Still, she tried one more time. I just wish you'd told us this sooner. I did, I said gently. Over and over in 100 small ways, every time I canceled plans to help, every time I swallowed frustration, every time I smiled through exhaustion, I was telling you. Katie muttered, so now what, you want us to beg you? No, I said, meeting her gaze. I want you to consider me, ask, don't assume, respect a no without making it a crime, that's all. My mom looked down at her notes, her fingers twitching like she didn't know what to do without authority. And then, in a voice that was quieter than I'd ever heard from her, she said, What are your terms? I could have cried, but I didn't. Instead, I gave them what I never thought I'd be allowed to say out loud. No unannounced childcare, no commitments without my consent, no guilt when I say no, and no more assuming I'll clean up what no one else wants to do. Jason leaned back, arms crossed. And if something urgent comes up? You ask, I said. Like adults, and if I can't, I can't. That's life. Katie didn't say anything, but she didn't argue either. And in that strange, quiet room where I'd once been invisible, I felt something shift, not dramatically, but permanently. They were finally listening, not because I yelled, but because I didn't. And that, I realized, was the difference between demanding attention and commanding it. They weren't used to the latter, but they would be. It didn't end with understanding. You don't change a family system without backlash. You don't rewire decades of unspoken agreements without someone trying to twist the cord back around your neck. So I wasn't surprised when it came. What surprised me was how steady I felt standing in the storm. The Easter conversation had ended with stiff nods and quiet agreement, but the detonation came a week later, at a family brunch of all places. A restaurant with white tablecloths, clinking silverware, and syrup that somehow managed to smell judgmental. Natalie had warned me. You laid down rules, she'd said. Now they're going to test them. And oh, they did. It started with Katie. We were halfway through our meals and she said it casually, like a tossed match. You know, it really embarrassed us when you bilated over Christmas. Jason nodded, spearing a piece of bacon. Yeah, you kind of abandoned the whole family. My fork paused midair. I didn't look up. My mom added softly, like a conspirator. We all just felt blindsided, sweetheart. It was unlike you. There it was, the quiet ambush. They had saved it, stored it up behind smiles and shallow peace, and now in public, where they thought I'd behave, they pounced. I set down my utensils with precision, wiped my mouth, and looked at each of them in turn. You embarrassed yourselves, I said calmly. I didn't bail, I left, there's a difference. Katie scoffed. It was manipulative. No, I replied. It was a boundary, you just didn't like the timing. Jason leaned forward. You didn't tell anyone until the last second, you made us scramble. I held his gaze. I told you I was leaving for a trip. You didn't ask for details because you didn't care. You assumed I'd be there because I always have been. That's not my failure, that's yours. The table fell silent. People at the table beside us glanced over. I did lower my voice, because for once I wasn't ashamed. My mom whispered, you used to be so sweet. I still am, I said. You just mistook my sweetness for servitude. She blinked, wounded. But I kept going, not out of anger, but because I was done letting guilt rewrite the narrative. You've taken my kindness for granted. You've treated my time like it's disposable. You made me the dependable one, not because I offered, but because it made your lives easier. Katie crossed her arms. So now what, Emily? You're too good for us. No, I said, voice soft but firm. I'm just good to myself now. Jason shook his head. This whole thing is just over the top. You're making rules like we're strangers. You are strangers to my boundaries, I replied. That's the problem. My mother looked like she might cry. I don't want this tension in our family. Then stop creating it by expecting me to silently absorb everything. Another silence. This one deeper. I leaned forward, steady. So here it is. One last time, as clearly as I can say it. They all looked up. No unannounced childcare, no guilt tripping, no assuming I'll show up just because I always have. If you want help, you ask clearly and respectfully, and if I say no, that's the end of it. I straightened my napkin, calm as ever. Jason looked away. Katie bit her lip. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. Because what do you say when the system breaks? What do you do when the person you leaned on walks away and doesn't come back to carry you? The check arrived. No one offered to split it. I paid it in full and stood. You don't have to like this version of me, I said, but this is me now. And I won't apologize for being done with drowning in other people's expectations. I left the restaurant with my head high and the wind sharp against my skin. They didn't follow me. They didn't call. And for the first time in my life, I was grateful. Easter used to be chaos. Egg dye in the carpet. Kids screaming over jelly beans. Me elbows deep in deviled eggs while my mom fretted over seating arrangements and Jason complained that we don't need a salad and vegetables. For years, it had followed the same script, stress masquerading as tradition with me in the starring role of unpaid coordinator. But this Easter, something was different. The first sign came a week before, a text from Jason. Hey, we hired a sitter for the twins on Sunday. Just wanted you to know, no kid duty. I stared at the message for a full minute, not because it shocked me, but because it didn't come with a but. No qualifiers, no in case something falls through, just a statement. Katie followed up an hour later. We'll bring dessert. Let us know if we should grab wine too. Let us know, not you'll bring or we assumed, I replied. That sounds great, I'll bring wine. Not because I had to, because I chose to. And my mother, she called me. Not to demand or guilt or instruct, just to check in. We're keeping it simple this year, she said. Brunch, no pressure. She paused, voice quieter. I want it to be peaceful for everyone. I didn't fill the silence. She added, I'm still learning, Emily, but I'm trying. That sentence, it didn't erase everything. It didn't fix years of imbalance or invisible labor, but it was real, and that mattered. Easter morning was bright and breezy, the kind of spring day that makes you believe in fresh starts. I wore a soft green dress and no apron. Brought 2 bottles of wine and a small vase of tulips. Nothing performative, just presence. When I arrived, Katie was already in the kitchen plating pastries. Jason was on the patio, tossing a football with the twins, who now had a designated sitter trailing behind them like a cheerful shadow. My mother opened the door and hugged me gently. Not tight, not clinging. Just enough. Inside, the table was already set. No one asked me to do a thing. I poured wine, took a seat, watched, listened. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel tension pulsing under my skin. I didn't feel like I was performing. I just was. We ate. We laughed a little. Someone brought up a viral video. My mom complimented my earrings. Jason offered me the last croissant without a side comment about finally relaxing. It wasn't perfect. Katie still snapped at the sitter once. Jason still talked over Grandma twice, but they didn't ask me to fix it. And when the dishes started piling up, my mom stood and said, let's all pitch in, everyone. That word, everyone, not Emily. Not the unspoken expectation that I'd just start cleaning while others drifted toward the living room. This time I stacked 2 plates. No more, no less. I handed them to Katie, who said sincerely, thanks. Later, as the sun dipped low and the backyard filled with pastel shadows, I stepped out onto the patio with my glass of wine. Natalie called, FaceTime lighting up my screen. Tell me you survived. I turned the camera to the view, tulips blooming in the garden, the kids giggling with bubbles, my brother and mom chatting without urgency. I didn't just survive, I said. I was present on my terms. She raised her mug on screen. To Emily, too, I laughed. Let's hope there's no rollback update. We talked for 20 minutes while the wind carried the scent of cinnamon rolls and spring. When I hung up, I stayed out there a little longer. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. No one called for me. No one needed anything. And no one made me feel guilty for just being still. And that peace, however tentative, however new, felt like the reward for every no I had ever been afraid to say. Exactly 1 year later, I was standing beneath fairy lights in Paris, holding a cup of mulled wine that warmed both my hands and my heart. It was snowing. Soft, feather-light flakes falling against the deep navy of a December sky. Children were skating clumsily on a temporary rink in the square, their cheeks flushed and their scarves trailing like comets. A brass quartet played a slow, sweet version of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And I was alone, on purpose. No baggage, no chaos. No unspoken expectations curled around my ankles like invisible tethers. Just me, exactly where I'd chosen to be. I walked slowly through the market stalls, gingerbread, wool scarves, carved wooden ornaments, and felt something settle in me that had taken a full year to earn. Not just peace. Sovereignty. That's the only word for it. The absolute right to rule my own life, quietly and without apology. Back home, it was still morning. The family would just be waking up, shuffling into kitchens, fumbling for coffee, and complaining about cold floors. I imagined Jason arguing with one of the twins over screen time, Katie checking on the ham, my mom adjusting throw pillows before guests arrived. And I smiled, not bitterly, warmly, because this time I hadn't been expected. I hadn't even been asked. They knew. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed gently in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a message in the family group chat. Photo, all of them in front of the fireplace, dressed in red and white, smiling forced but polite. Merry Christmas from us all. Hope you're having a wonderful time, Emily. No guilt, no passive aggression, no wish you were here. Just a message. I stared at it, stunned by how small and simple it was and how long I had fought for that kind of simplicity. I typed back, "Merci, the lights are beautiful. Hope the kids got everything they wanted." I attached a photo of the market. Glowing stalls, falling snow, a little girl in a green coat holding a wooden reindeer. Katie reacted with a heart. Jason gave it a thumbs up. My mom sent a wreath emoji. That was it, nothing more. And for once, that was enough. I tucked the phone back in my coat and kept walking, my boots crunching gently through snow-dusted cobblestone. I stopped at a stall selling ornaments hand-painted with Parisian landmarks and picked out one with a tiny version of the Eiffel Tower. It sparkled in the light, delicate but solid. A memory, yes, but also a declaration. This was my life now, still connected, still loving, but no longer owned. I wasn't the default anymore, not the filler, not the patch. I was a person with edges, borders, a whole geography that existed outside my family's map. And that map, I'd finally redrawn it. The sound of bells pulled me toward the ice rink, where a little girl in a red hat was spinning in circles, arms outstretched, laughing so hard she nearly fell. She didn't fall, though. She caught herself. And I thought, yes, that's it. That's the version of me I fought for. The one who still wobbles sometimes, still loses balance, but now knows exactly how to catch herself before she crashes. And maybe that's what freedom really is. Not the absence of family, but the presence of choice. I lifted my cup to the sky, let the snow land on my eyelashes, and whispered into the cold, "Merry Christmas, Emily." Because sometimes the only person who needs to hear it is you. Thank you for following Emily's journey, from exhaustion and invisibility to clarity and quiet power. If her story resonated with you, tell me in the comments. What's one boundary you've learned to set for yourself in the last year, and where in the world are you watching this video from? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you believe more women deserve to own their time and rewrite the rules of their own story.